New York City built the world's largest subway system, but contrary to popular belief, it wasn't their first. You see, in 1870, inventor and scientific American editor Alfred Beach constructed a working underground transit tunnel beneath Broadway. This was a radical concept, as the entire system ran on pressurized air, not electricity, and it worked. But instead of expanding, it was shut down, sealed off, and eventually abandoned. For decades, the tunnel remained beneath the street, forgotten and buried, until construction workers rediscovered it 40 years later. So why did New York's first subway disappear, and what became of it? Stay tuned to find out, as today, we uncover the story of New York's forgotten pneumatic transit system. I'm your host, Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. Let's head back to a time when Manhattan streets were so clogged with chaos that it became difficult to send a letter from one part of the city to another. In the mid-19th century, New York City was already showing signs of growing faster than it could handle. The population exploded, and with it came an unstoppable flood of people. Horses, carts, omnibuses, and street vendors, all cramped into the same dusty lanes. Broadway, the city's proudest thoroughfare, had turned into a gridlocked, noisy artery where it could take more than an hour to travel a mile. Most transportation was still above ground and painfully slow. Elevated railways would later provide some relief, but at this point, they were still controversial, noisy, and met intense opposition from property owners. So the city was desperate for a new solution, but no one agreed on what that should be. Adding to the tension politically was New York's booming economy, as shipping, manufacturing, and immigration all demanded efficient movement, yet the streets just couldn't keep up. Ideas were tossed around, some practicals, other fanciful. And I need to emphasize that as far as most were concerned, at this point in history, underground travel was something more of a speculative fiction than a realistic civic engineering prospect. Even so, amid that gridlock and skepticism, there was one man who looked not to rails, but to air. And in that vacuum, quite literally, Alfred Beach would make his move. Alfred Beach was no eccentric tinkerer. He was the editor of Scientific American, a man fluent in both innovation and public persuasion. Born in 1826, Beach had long championed technological advancement, and by the 1860s, he became obsessed with the idea of underground transit, specifically using pneumatic pressure to silently move people beneath the streets. And the concept caught on fast when Beach showcased a working model of his pneumatic transit system at the 1867 American Institute Fair. This demonstration was highly popular, served as a proof of concept, and illustrated the feasibility of using air pressure for underground transportation. The system was mechanically simple, but carefully engineered. A 100-horsepower steam engine powered a giant fan, dubbed the root blower, which pushed air into the tunnel behind the car, propelling it forward at speeds of up to 10 miles per hour. For the return trip, the airflow was reversed, creating suction that pulled the car back towards the station. The car itself fit snugly inside the tunnel, riding on narrow-gauge tracks with rubber flanges that helped maintain pressure and minimize drag. Station operators controlled the airflow from a chamber adjacent to the platform, allowing them to start, stop, or reverse the vehicle on demand. This wasn't just a prototype. It was functioning, rideable, and real transportation. With that in mind, Beach wasn't the only one thinking about subways, but he had a real advantage since all of the other plans were hindered by politics and property disputes. His solution just cut through all of that. He used trickle truth in the application process. He proposed a pneumatic tube with an object propelled forward by air pressure and then drawn backwards by suction. He didn't say it was going to be a train car being pushed back and forth. So, as far as anyone understood it, this was a similar system to the pneumatic mail systems already in use and very popular at the time. In 1868, Beach applied for a permit formally from Tammany Hall, not to build a subway, but instead an underground pneumatic tube. Basically, this shady move was done to bypass an even shadier character known as Boss Tweed, the powerful leader of Tammany Hall back then, who, I might add, also had a significant financial interest in rising elevated railways of the era. And Beach knew that his plans posed a direct threat to those interests. So, by framing this project as a mail delivery system of sorts, Beach aimed to step side potential obstruction from Town Hall and the political machine. This was deliberate misdirection. By describing the project as mail-focused, he avoided a public fight with property owners and a corrupt city official like Boss Tweed. So, to clarify, Beach didn't ask for permission to build a subway, he just built one. Construction began in 1869 beneath the basement of Devlin's clothing store at Broadway and Warren Street. Beach used a circular tunneling shield of his own design, essentially a large cast iron cutter that bore through the earth without disrupting the surface activity. This wasn't just a novel approach, it was a breakthrough. You see, Beach's cylindrical tunneling shield used hydraulic jacks to press forward through the soil while workers bricked up the tunnel behind it, demonstrating that you could dig under New York City without tearing up the entire street above, a lesson engineers took directly into the real subway era that would follow shortly thereafter. Once complete, the tunnel stretched 312 feet along Broadway to Murray Street and was 8 feet in diameter, just enough to fit one cylindrical passenger car. The design was part transportation and part theater. The station, opened to the public in February of 1870, was outfitted like a hotel lobby. Marble floors, ornate furniture, gas chandeliers, even a fountain and a grand piano. The car itself, called the Western Union, was padded and plush and could accommodate about 20 passengers at a time. For high-demand days, Beach swapped in a larger open platform car fitted with a canvas sail to catch the airflow. It wasn't as elegant, but it moved over 30 riders at once and looked like something straight out of science fiction. Now, I should also point out that the plan was much bigger than a single stretch. In fact, according to documents and newspaper accounts from 1871, his goal was to run subway lines all the way up Broadway to Central Park, eventually branching into a full underground network across Manhattan. Though none of this was meant to be, political pressure kept him locked down to just the short demonstration route. Despite huge public interest and over 400,000 rides in the first year alone, the city refused to authorize expansion. The tunnel worked, the technology functioned, and the people were ready for it, but the city's power brokers were not. When Beach unveiled a full passenger subway in 1870, the city officials realized that they had been outmaneuvered, and this is where the problems all started. Specifically, the original permit he secured in 1868 was for a pneumatic mail tube, not a public transit tunnel. And when the authorities realized they were duped, it ignited political retaliation. According to the New York Daily Herald from March 18th of 1871, the Board of Aldermen accused Beach of violating the scope of his authorization. They argued that while he hadn't broken the law outright, he'd misled the city by bypassing required legislative approvals. Tammany Hall quickly moved to block expansion. Boss Tweed, tied to competing elevated rail schemes, saw Beach's subway as a threat to his financial interests. So when Beach introduced a bill in 1871 to legally expand his line northward, it was killed in committee. No vote, no debate, just buried. Though court actions followed. By April of 1871, legal filings and city orders challenged the tunnel's legitimacy, alleging unauthorized public use of city property. Though Beach pushed back on this, citing a vague wording of his permit and tunnel's public safety record. No one had been harmed. The air system worked. But in politics, facts don't always matter. Control does. By 1873, the legal and political blockade became final. The New York legislature refused to grant expansion rights, and investors walked. We should also add that compounding these challenges, the Panic of 1873 triggered a severe economic downturn, drawing up investment capital and effectively ending prospects for expanding Beach's subway with or without the legal problems. And with that, Beach just shut down the system suddenly, leaving it to be forever abandoned. By the early 20th century, most New Yorkers had forgotten the tunnel even existed. After Beach's system was shut down in 1873, the sealed entrance beneath Devlin's clothing store remained hidden in plain sight. Then, in 1898, Devlin's burnt to the ground. the tunnel sat untouched beneath the street for another 40 years from there. In fact, it wouldn't be until 1912, during excavations for the BMT Broadway line, that construction crews unearthed the old pneumatic tube. Newspaper reports from the time described the remains, part of the original car, rusting on its track. As for the tunneling shield, some claims say that it was wedged into the earth, though one of our viewers, the one who proposed that I cover this story, sent me this image of the shield on display at Cornell sometime between 1910 and 1918, claiming it to be the last known photo of the device. So it's something of an open debate. The piano, once used to entertain visitors, was still there, water damaged but recognizable. The tunnel was examined briefly, photographed, and then dismantled to make way for the new subway line. By 1913, what hadn't been salvaged was filled in or destroyed. In other words, there would be no marker, no plaque, just another layer of infrastructure buried beneath the city. As for the men behind the project, Alfred Beach remained active in publishing through the 1880s and served as a regent of the University of the State of New York. He passed away on January 1, 1896 from pneumonia at the age of 69. He was buried in Union Cemetery in Stratford, Connecticut. Beach's chief engineer, Joseph Dixon, later contributed to developments in tunneling and mechanical systems, but none of his subsequent projects matched the visibility of the pneumatic subway, and unfortunately his name largely faded from public memory. Now, to the best of our research, there was no publicly available final report, just a sealed door in a tunnel that became a part of New York City's hidden past. And that's the story of New York's forgotten first subway, buried beneath Broadway. Historians now recognize that Beach wasn't just experimenting. Rather, he was laying the foundation for the future of engineering. His tunnel, car design, and shield directly influenced how subways would be built for generations, even if his name was left out of their blueprints. It makes you wonder about what else might be buried beneath American streets. And if you have a story like this, perhaps you know about a secret tunnel that I've overlooked, drop in on our Patreon page and let me know. There's an open form that's actually free to fill out. That's where you can send your episode ideas. Otherwise, I thank you for watching and subscribing. And until next time, I'm Ryan Socash, signing off.